Hi, I'm Jeff Murrah, and I want to welcome you to Healthy Marriage Tips. And today, our focus is going to be handling a spouse that shuts you out. This came up yesterday and talking about dealing with an angry spouse, because some spouses literally shut down or get up and leave, and that makes dealing with them very difficult. In my mind, I see a difference between shutting down and shutting out. Shutting down, the eyes glaze over, they refuse talking, they refuse making eye contact, they refuse saying anything. This is very different than the one that shuts up and leaves. Shutting up and leaving, I typically see that associated with anger, and anger excuse me, is a secondary emotion. Being a secondary emotion, the anger is a reaction to something. You apparently hit a nerve, and they had the angry reaction and want to leave. Now, what's going to make a big difference is finding out what that root emotion is that they're using the anger to cover up. I mean, it might be it might be embarrassment, might be shame, might be fear, might be inadequacy. There's a lot of things that people use anger to cover up. It's almost like because anger is such an empowering emotion, people will use that as a way to hide behind them feeling vulnerable or you seeing the real them. Now, when they are either shutting down or shutting you out, typically they're overstimulated at some level. Either too much information is coming in or too much is coming up inside of them. This overload presents a challenge. Now, this is tricky in that you want to be careful that they're not seething, because if they're sitting there being silent and you see them clenching their fist, or you see the muscles in the neck starting to clench up, eyes furrowing, nostrils starting to flare, you're dealing with anger. You don't want to push them too much at that point, because it could turn explosive. Now, anytime you're dealing with somebody who has anger, you want to go ahead and take steps to make sure things are safe. Like they're not going to pick up weapons or pick up things and throw them at you. But those are some of the things that when you see them, the fist, some of those other things, to proceed carefully. Now, hopefully you're not so wound up in what you're doing that you're not able to stop. Now, I've seen that happen too. Spouse just gets going and going, and they dig. It's just too much. Now, a few things to consider. First of all, does your spouse know how to deal with feelings? They may not know how to deal with what's coming up inside of them. And this is where there are differences between males and females in how they deal with feelings. Not all men know how to deal with feelings. And sitting down across from each other is something some men find threatening and intimidating, and they're very uncomfortable with. You may, if you're dealing with an unresponsive husband, you may need to let them go ahead and, play with a pen or something like that. It's not that they're distracted. They do better when they have something to hold on to. I know that sounds strange, but give it a try. You may have to give them some leeway in terms of making eye contact, because some men do view eye contact as threatening. There's a cultural component there, because some cultures view the eye contact as intimidating, attacking their manhood and so forth, whereas others are A-okay with it. So you're going to have to keep that in mind. And also the time and the place where the interaction occurs. You're going to have to look at that. You know, if you hit them with stuff right after they get home from work, yeah, you're going to be looking at an explosive situation. You want to give them time to mentally shift gears before you go ahead and share with them what it is that you want to share with them. And you also want to be careful about the place. I talked about this some yesterday. Avoid the bedroom. The kitchen is good. Living room is good. Preferably where you sit down and can share with the table or something to intervene. Now, in terms of sharing with them, first of all, get their attention. Make sure that you have their full undivided attention. Of course, that means the TV is going to need to be off, or whatever it is that might be distracting them. Get their attention. Then when you deliver your message, deliver one message or one question. Don't machine gun them with one after another, after another, after another. Because I know sometimes people feel like you've got a lot that you want to talk to them about, and they're not letting you hit everything at once. It might be too much for them. And that's why I say deal with it one at a time. If it's a question that you're wanting to deal with, ask them the question and then wait for the answer. Don't try to pull it out of them at that point. There's a time and a place that you need to pull it out of them. Initially, you don't want to do that. When the time comes, I'll give you something, some ways to go ahead and pull it out of them. And a third thing is to value what they tell you. If you're pressing them for answers and then you discount what they say, they are going to shut down. If you're a person that, if they give you an answer that you don't like and you say, that's BS, you're going to make them shut down even more. Or that's typically the response. Because when you have a spouse that actually values what their spouse says and listens to it, I mean, whether or not you agree with it, that's a whole other matter, but you need to at least hear them out. A lot of times, once they start talking and you're listening to them, you can follow up with questions like, tell me more. I want to hear more about that. Can you explain that a little further? And they'll start by giving you a little sliver of information. As you start showing some interest, it expands more and more, and then you get a fuller and fuller picture of what's going on. It would be nice if spouses are willing to be vulnerable with each other, but some couples aren't at that point, and some men and some women aren't at that point where they feel safe to go ahead and be vulnerable with each other. And that's part of what's behind them shutting down. It's just, they're not used to it. They may have grown up in a home where there was a lot of violence or a lot of abuse, and they've got negative association or trauma bonds, like we've been talking about, associated with vulnerability and opening up. So try these. I am going to follow up with some more sessions dealing with the shutting down and shutting out phenomena and ways of handling that. Because there's ways of handling them and also ways of handling what's going on inside of you during those times, because it's very frustrating, because it feels like you're hitting a wall and you don't like that. So that's another challenge that comes with those situations. This will give you a place to start. I'll follow up more on this next week, and until then, best regards. Goodbye.